Hi everybody and welcome to this new lesson. Today we are talking about tuning. Tuning in QRadar is important and vital as also with other SIEM solutions. So after your initial deployment, you'll start seeing a lot of offenses trigger in your the environment. So you need actually to look after these offenses and start doing tuning for the environment, and this is considered like initial deployment tuning, and after that the process should continue. So the tuning is not a one-time task, it's a continuous job that if you are handing over this implementation to the customer or the SOC team or whoever, you have to stress on the importance of the tuning, and that they need to actually revisit the rules and the building blocks and the host definitions, all the things that we will learn in this lesson. They need to revisit them regularly to perform the tuning. Otherwise the system will just triggering or sending off a lot of offenses that are unwanted, and will distract actually the SOC analysts from catching the real attacks. Actually this lesson we will focus on tuning without using any apps in QRadar. The second lesson, which will be the next video, will focus on doing tuning using the use case manager app. In the previous lesson, the application management, we make some changes to the apps that we have in QRadar, and we installed the use case manager actually to use it in the next lesson. But in this lesson I will focus with you guys with the tuning without any apps. So even if you are not planning for installing the use case manager application, using the knowledge that you learn in this video is enough for you, and it's very sufficient for you to make the tuning. The key thing about tuning is that it is a continuous process. You shouldn't do it one time and forget. It's not set and forget, like for example you configure your firewall with some traffic metrics and leave it. No, it is even the firewall you need to update in case of changes. The tuning is the same thing, but it doesn't need that you wait for someone to tell you you have to tune. This is a continuous process. So let's jump in to the agenda of the tuning phases that you should go through. So we will make first something called tuning report and see how to do this report, and then the importance of this report to identify the noisy offenses, and this actually need to be done from time to time, not a one-time task. We need to review the network hierarchy. Again, this need to be done regularly. Review building blocks, other things to review, the false positives tuning methodology, and finally we will talk about the VA scanners and the useful information that can help in the tuning of your QRadar setup. So to start, we don't start with the offense page. So you don't just come here and visit the offenses page and start look after the offenses here. So actually you will be confused which one I need to start with. Okay, so this is not the right place to start the tuning. Actually the right place to start your tuning is to go to the log activity tab and construct a weekly report, and this actually need to be done on weekly basis or monthly basis. So for example, if we want to make a weekly review, we need to make a search using this parameter. So time the range like recent last 7 days for weekly review, and then group by event name, and the log source should be the custom rule engine 8. Okay, so doing that, we go to the log activity page. Okay, and in the search you edit the search, and then in the recent for the time frame, actually you need to select in the time range, select recent and last 7 days if it is a daily weekly review, and then here you need to group by the event name. Okay, so first, since it's selected, we need to remove it first and then add it here. But actually the grouping is not valid with the payload, as we learned about this before. So we need to remove the payload and then again add the event name. Then you come here and select the log source indexed, and then select the custom rule engine. Then you add this filter, then you press search. Pressing search will get you to this nice report where you have here the name of the events, okay, and the count. So you can see here, for example, multiple exploit malware types. This is the first one. Actually, the first one you see here is stored, which is something related to some parsing problem or some actually cleaning that is going for offenses, or it's internal thing that it's not actual offense. So the first one is the multiple exploit malware types. We can see this one here with the maximum count, and then we have the others with like 430, 27 and 1. So actually this count in this descending order can help you prioritize the tuning tasks. So it makes sense that we start with this one because it is generating the highest count, and then move to the second, and maybe we can leave the others. This is acceptable. Okay, so this is very important, guys, the tuning report, and these are the criteria for establishing that report. So this report will help you to identify which rules are triggering the most. You can save this report to run it regularly for weekly reviews, for example. So as we learned before, we can simply save this criteria to run it again. So we can name it weekly tuning report. Okay, and then we can include in the dashboards, and we can save to the group we need. Okay, so this is a very important aspect. As you can see, we don't need any application to do such thing. It's very simple and to the point. After you identified the rule that is doing a lot of offenses, you can open the rule and start checking the different condition of the rule, the different things that can help you identify or actually reduce the noise. So for example, this event is actually the event generated by the for that offense, and so we can now go for the offense itself, and from here you can display the rule itself that initiated the event, and you can open the rule and start looking into the different things here, like the time range, for example. So you can see here what we can modify the rule thresholds, the time intervals, the context. So for example, the thresholds here more than 10 times. So here we are looking for this category with the same destination IP more than 10 times. Okay, so this is a threshold that we can modify to reduce the noise. So for example, we can say more than 20 times or 30 times to reduce the noise. Here we are looking for more than 6 QID within 5 minutes. We can make it within 1 minute, so to reduce the noise, or more than 10 QIDs. So you can modify the thresholds or the time to reduce the noise, also the context. So for example, you can add something related to the direction or the context. So when the event context is something like local to local or local to remote, so doing this can reduce the noise, and actually you can build this context based on the events that you can see, the events that are responsible to trigger this rule. So actually if you go to the offense itself, we are here. Okay, so in the summary of the offense, you can see down here the events that are triggering the rule. So you can check these events, and based on that you can define the context. So we can see here, for example, the destination is this IP. We can see the top destination IP is the top source IP, so it seems to be local to local, for example. So restricting the context can help you, or actually you find that this is false positive, so we don't need to check local to local, we need to check local to remote, or remote to local. Okay, so defining the context can reduce the noise. Don't generate offenses for lightweight rules. So actually there is nothing called lightweight rules in QRadar. It's an ArcSight naming convention, but what is meant here by lightweight rule is a rule that is actually not meant for generating offense. It's just a rule that is filling a reference set, or removing entries from a reference set. So for example, if you are tracking the VPN connection establishments and VPN connection terminations, so there is no point for generating an offense for each VPN connection establishment or termination. It's useless. Actually, the whole purpose behind this rule is to just fill the reference set for later correlation with other rules. So this is one of the things that so basically, or bottom line, don't generate offenses for things that you believe that it doesn't require further analysis or investigation. Also, you can disable rules which produce numerous unwanted offenses. So for our case here, if you believe that most of the instances of this offense are actually related to false positives, and as we checked from a while, the context was local to local, and this actually meant for remote attacks coming to a local destination. So you can go ahead and disable this one, but this is the last option I have to say. If you are busing with all this, and at the end still it's triggering a lot. Next we go for reviewing the network hierarchy. So the network hierarchy, you can get it from the admin page. You have here the network hierarchy, and this is very important, guys, to define your network hierarchy, because building a network hierarchy is something essential in QRadar. As you can see here, these are the different things that QRadar is using for the network hierarchy. It understands the network traffic, the activity, monitor the specific logical groups or services such as DMZ or VoIP. So actually defining a DMZ and put the right IPs for them, this for sure coming with the initial deployment. So here it means that QRadar knows that this actually is default things, these are not real. So you need actually to define the DMZ. If you have internal one, external one, you need to define all of this, because these logical groups help QRadar to identify the patterns for each and every group defined. As you can see here, it can profile the behavior of each group and determine and identify local and remote hosts. So if you have a remote, if you have any IP that is considered public, for example, you have to come here and define. Otherwise, this public IP will be considered as remote to your network. Actually, I'm focusing on the public because here you can see the The RFC private range is already defined, so any private IP will be considered local to QRadar by default. You don't need to come here and define the ranges of the private networks. It's already defined for you. However, for private networks, you still need to come and tell that this is proxy, this is scanners, this is DMZ or whatever. What I was talking about, the public ones, like the published the range for your services. Those published the ranges are all public IPs, so you need to tell QRadar that this belongs to your environment. Okay, so this is very important. So QRadar actually support any network hierarchy that can be defined by a range of IP addresses. So you can see here, you can go ahead and start adding any IP or CIDR range. Okay, and you can group them actually based on different variables like geographical or business unit, marketing, sales, or this is Europe, this is the America branch, and so on. So this logical network ranges must be defined as a network object. It shouldn't be physical. No, you can define logical. Without a well-configured network hierarchy, QRadar cannot determine flow directions, like knowing this is from inside to outside or from outside to inside. If you don't define, for example, your scanner, local scanner, if you have a local scanner inside your environment and you don't define this one, maybe it will consider the flow direction as remote to local. However, it is local to local. So this is very important. Here we see that one important point, that you have to review this from time to time and make sure it's up to date. Okay, some guidelines for network hierarchy we will explore through these two slides. First one is to organize your systems and networks by role or similar traffic patterns, like mail servers you put in one group, departmental users, labs, or development teams. So all of these are examples where you can group your network in similar patterns. So this can help in the, for example, the anomaly rules which we discussed before. You remember the behavioral rules. This kind of anomaly detection is actually based on establishing a baseline for these groups. Okay, so this helps QRadar to differentiate the network behavior and enforce behavior-based network management security policies. So this leads us to not group a server that has unique behavior with other servers on your network. So don't put a domain controller which is a heavy EPS server, for example, with one other server like file server. So don't group things like that together, otherwise you will confuse the QRadar when it's establishing the baselines for these groups. Okay, placing a unique server alone provides the server great visibility in QRadar. So there is no problem to just put one server in one group, like the file server. It's only one server. You don't have other servers that share the same behavior of the file server. No problem to put it in one group. Actually, this makes it easier to create policies for the server. Place servers with high volume of traffic, such as mail servers, at the top of the group. Actually, this is something for organizing your network hierarchy. So if you have multiple proxy servers, but you believe this proxy server, one of them is actually handling most of the traffic, put it at the first. This will help you in identifying problems in the future. Okay, avoid having too many elements at the root level. So don't just make it flat and everything is belonging to the root level. Don't configure a network group with more than 15 objects. So don't add more than, so this is 1, 2, 3. You have you can put up to 15, but not more than that. So this is actually a group of called you see here, these are the groups. Okay, so I have a group here called net 10 172 192, and this group has these 3 objects, so don't put more than 15. Okay, this is just a best practice, it's not something strict. Add key servers as individual objects and group other major but related servers into multiple CIDR objects. So if you can, just to save this disk space on your QRadar, instead of adding like 15 objects in one group, if you can group like 5, 7, 10, all the 15 into one CIDR range, this will save actually the disk space for QRadar, because instead of establishing a profile for each and every object out of this 15, if we manage to make them in one range, this will save this disk space, because QRadar will establish one profile for this CIDR range. So actually defining groups help you manage better the network, and instead of defining the networks in a flat way, groups will help you to apply policies for the individual members in more consistent way. So administrators must define the following top level objects like DMZ, VPN, like data center, server networks, network management devices. So we can see here, for example, the DMZ. So for example, this external range is for the published services. So if it's like a healthcare industry and it has some server where all the patients can access and check their health file, so for that system it will have an IP that is external. Actually this server will be in the DMZ, it has an external IP and internal IP. So this external IPs or published services, let's say, should be defined here, and the internal ones should be defined here, and so on for proxy servers and for other systems. So here is how to like validate your network hierarchy. So you can run a search where the direction equals remote to remote and check for the results. If you have results here, this has 2 meanings. The first one is like your environment is or your organization is actually relaying traffic for 2 distant networks. So you have one network A talking to network B, but this traffic for some reason is coming through your network. Maybe you are a partner or you are an ISP or whatever. So this could happen that but this situation is actually very odd. The most reason for this is that you did not define either the source or the destination is not defined in your network. For example, if it is some public scanner, okay, and it's scanning, so it's coming from outside, and the scan systems also are not defined, so it will be remote to remote. So this is an easy thing that you can do, guys, actually. So if we come here, we can check the log activity. Again, we can instead of this one, we can come here and select the direction. Okay, direction. This is helpful to as we explained, to define remote to remote. So you can say direction is equal to remote to remote. This filter is useful for this task. Also you can define source or destination network, yes, and equal to other. This is also so you have to select one of the 2, not both together. So either this one or this one, you cannot do this the 2 together. So for example, we can run a search like this: source or destination network is other. And here we can check and identify that, for example, this okay, so this is public, so this is okay, but for example here we can see this one, or actually this one. So this one is actually seen as so the destination network here is public, okay, remote. This one is private. So actually the one with remote to remote will be more accurate. So here, instead of this one, you can remove and select direction as equal to remote. I believe this one shouldn't generate a lot of false things for you. So you can see here this one, for example, or even the loopback is not defined. So this means that we need to define the loopback, and so on. Okay. Next, we need to check or review the building blocks. So actually, building blocks are used by QRadar to tune the system and allow more correlation rules to be enabled. So as the name indicates, and as we explained in before, the building blocks are like filters for small things. I need to tag my DNS servers. I need to tag my FTP servers. Okay, so I establish a filter to define this systems, or to classify these systems, or to tag these systems, and then I can call them later in correlation rules. So this reducing the building blocks, if they are defined in correct way, that maps your environment correctly, this will reduce the number of false positives that are detected. And also, if you define your business critical assets in the right building blocks, this again will reduce the false positives. So you need to add the authorized infrastructure service to a selected building blocks. QRadar monitors these servers while it suppresses false positives that are specific to the server category. Actually, an authorized server might belong to multiple building blocks. Like, for example, you have an Active Directory domain controller. Maybe it's identified in both the DNS servers and Microsoft Windows, so it actually has the role of DNS server as well. Okay, so which building blocks we need to focus on? The host building blocks and the port definition building blocks. Other building blocks we'll talk about later. Okay, so if we go to the QRadar, actually guys, we have something called host definition building block. Okay, so not this one, actually host definition is here. Yeah, you can see here, like host definition for RPC servers, for SSH server, for VPN assets. Okay, so this host definitions need to be maintained and mapping correctly your environment. You have two ways to update them, either using manually. So simply I can open the SSH servers, and then I will start adding the IP that represents this DNS, these SSH servers. So I will click here, and then I'll start adding like 1.1.1.1 add, and that's it. So it's very simple and straightforward. And you can see here that there is no plus or minus. You cannot actually edit the building blocks. So to remove a condition. So this is a fixed condition for the host definition building blocks. These are building blocks coming by default. It's out of the box. So for example here, when a flow or an event matches any of the following building block called port definition. So we have port definition building block, and we have host definition building block. So the host definition building block is actually calling the port definition building block. And the only thing that you can do here is to actually come and modify the IPs that belong to the SSH servers. So this is important information. Through multiple workshops with your customer, you need to collect this information, and you need to spend much time for these things, because this is the like building the infra or the base for your QRadar, and it will save you a lot of time in the future, like tuning and removing false positives. Okay, so this is the manual way. You come here and edit. Also, you can edit the port definition itself, and if you have a like non-standard ports for SSH, not the 22, the standard one. For example, you are making SSH on different port, you need to edit this building block. Again, you can come here to the building blocks and type the name of this building block, like building block port definition SSH ports, and search for it, edit it, and start adding the different non-standard ports. So you need to edit this building block to define typical SSH server, and each building block, host definition building block, has one corresponding false positive building block. So actually what is happening here, guys, that the false positive building block is actually calling the host definition SSH servers building block, or any false positive building block for specific host definition is actually calling the host definition building block itself. So these building blocks are there in the different rules coming with the QRadar out of the box. So updating this host definitions will actually reduce the false positive. So now we understand the mechanism. And to make it more clear for you guys, if we check this diagram, so assume that this are all the rules that are coming out of the box in QRadar. So actually these rules are referencing the false positives building blocks coming again out of the box in QRadar. So for example, rule 1 is referencing this false positive for SSH server. Rule 2 is referencing the building blocks false positive 2. Rule N is referencing this false positive M, and so on. Okay, again, the building blocks for false positives are referencing the host definition. So the false positive building block for SSH server is referencing the host definition SSH server, and for example, the false positive 2 is referencing the host definition 2, and so on. And the host definition actually is referencing the port definition, as we saw. So actually this nice structure for the out of the box content is designed on purpose to make things more smooth for you guys to tune your environment. So all the things that you need to focus on is just to come to the host definitions and update the SSH servers, your DNS servers, whatever host definitions that you have in the out of the box coming with QRadar. You need to just review and update, and then things will go smoothly till the rules, so your rules will not fire for non-important things. Okay, so let's go back here. So for example, if you check for the SSH server false positives categories or events, so actually each building block, host definition building block, is actually correspond to 2 false positive groups, one for categories and one for events. Okay, so if we check here, for example, this is the events one. You can see here that it is referencing the SSH server group. Okay, and if you check the categories, again it's referencing the building block for the host definition. Actually host definition, not host reference. We will come to know about the host reference in a bit. Okay, so I will come to this later. Okay guys, so this actually confirms what we were saying on the diagrams, that the false positive building blocks are referencing the host definition building blocks. So the false positive building block is referencing the host definition building block. That's why here the comment is added. This is just a note that you guys need to maintain these groups, because this building block is used in conjunction with the false positives groups. Doing so will reduce your false positive. So this is the manual way of doing things. The automatic way is actually through the server discovery. So what is server discovery? Actually, this is a feature that relies on the asset profile database. The asset profile database is something you can find here in the assets tab. Actually, you can see here all the assets discovered by QRadar, and the server discovery is a feature where it can query the asset database. So first of all, how is this asset profile database established in the first place? Actually, it's established using either the flow data or the the vulnerability assessment scanner data. So if you have any scanner in your environment that scans your infrastructure regularly, and you feed this information into QRadar, this information can help establish the asset profile database. If you don't have this one, the second option is to use the flows, the Q flows into QRadar. Like from the network activity tab, we saw before that the flows are coming here. So either way, flows or VA scanner data, the asset profile database is established. If you don't have any of these two, the manual way is available. You can come here and actually add an asset, or you can actually import a list of IBs if you want. Okay, so you have either way for the manual as well. So you have two ways for automatic, either flow data or VA scanner data. You have a manual way of adding one by one asset or import. So if actually you want to import, you come from here and you have to write the CSV file in this format. So the IP of the asset, the name of the asset, weight and description. So for example, if we want to add this asset, let's say 100 or 110, name it Hatim PC. Okay, so Hatim laptop. Okay, so this example we can browse and add this asset profile data file. This is my file name, and import the asset. So it will come successful. It will come here for you. So 192.168.10.110, this one Hatim PC. Okay, so regardless of the way that you established or you populated your asset database, the feature is available for server discovery, where you can actually use this feature to automatically populate your host and port definitions. Actually, your host definitions, not port definitions. So from here you can edit the definition of the ports that you use for actually from here you can edit the definition of the ports. You can add the ports. For example, this is database ports. You can edit the ports from here. You start adding whatever other ports you want. Okay, so this is actually the ports already there. You can add another port, non-standard port if there is any, and then here you can edit the building block correspond to the database, which will be host definition database servers. So again, here it's calling the port definition, and you can add the IBs. So adding the IBs this way we already knew about. This is a manual way. If you want to utilize a feature of the server discovery, you just discover the server. So for example, if we go for SSH servers and we it will load here. The 22 is the default one. If you need to edit, you can do so, and then discover servers. It will bring here the servers that seen talking to this port 22, and you have the option to approve or discard this. So for example, this is a QRadar, and normally it's used that you can access it using SSH, so I don't need to include, I need to include only the 10.0.30. So before I do this, I wanted to show you what is the values inside the host definition for SSH server. So now only 127.0.0.2. So after I approve this change, actually it will update automatically for me the building block for SSH servers. So you can see now that the building block is updated with the IP address. So as indicated here, assigned servers have been successfully updated. So if we edit the definition again, we can see the IP is added beside the one that was already coming by default. So it's very useful feature for the server discovery that you can use to update your building blocks. So basically these are the building blocks that you need to modify. For vulnerability assessment scanner, source IPs, this is one important. Network management servers, virus definition, actually these are mentioned here along with the description of the relevant tools. Like for example, if you have the HP OpenView in your environment, you need to update inside the network management server. If you have Blue Coat proxy, Palo Alto inline firewall, you need to update here, and so on. If you have Nessus, Encircle or Rapid7 or whatever the scanner you have, you need to update their scanner IPs here. Okay, so what are other things we need to review? Before that, I just want to stress the fact that the host definitions are the most important, guys, and also there are network definitions. So actually in QRadar you can search for network definitions beside the host definitions. So here you can see both of them, host definitions, and I show you now. These are the host definition, and you have also network definitions like this: server networks, broadcast address space, DMZ. Maybe you can define your own, like trusted networks. Okay, these are important. Okay, other things we can define is actually the category definitions. So if we go to the building blocks, and you can search for category definitions like patterns for events received, like authentication failures. You can see here Takakis authentication failures, Radius SSH login failures. If we check here, for example, DDoS attack events, so things like this one, DOS distributed low rate, DOS distributed high rate. So category definitions are one of the things you need to review. It's not something important like the host definitions, because actually host definitions are something depending on your environment too much. But for category definitions, I think the engineers from IBM is doing a great job for this, and they defined most of the categories. If you believe that you have some special log sources that their categories are not there, you should come and put them here or update, or if you established some parser for developed your own custom DSM for your log source, and you manage the categories and all of these things from scratch, you come and update the relevant category in the relevant group. Okay, next we have reference sets. We already have a dedicated lesson for reference sets. So basically reference sets are storing IOCs, and this is one of the important things that you may need to come and check, because maybe one reference set like the one here for web servers you are using for inside a rule or so instead of your rule calling the false positives, which is calling host definition, your rule is also calling some reference sets in their conditions. So one of the reference set, for example, is web servers, and there are changes happened and the web servers in this reference set is no longer valid. You need to revisit and update it. Also we have a new concept called host reference. So what is a host reference? Actually, let's first explore the differences between host definition and reference set. So reference set, we know, guys, if we open it, we can check the contents. As we learned before, we can add manually, we can delete, we can import from a list, we can actually edit it through API or CLI or the CTI, the cyber threat intelligence for lists like the X-Force exchange lists. When you configure your API with X-Force, these lists are created automatically for the advanced threat protection, or manually you can fill the lists manually, or this can be filled if you have any associated rules that is actually filling the list like this one here. The rule, this rule can actually, this one rule can fill this list named the process hashes started by system user, as we saw before. So this is where the reference set are being fed with these options. The offense, if the rule that you configured, its response is filling the reference set. So offenses, API, CLI, CTI, and manually. Regarding host definition, as we saw, you can edit it manually, add the IPs manually, or you can use the server discovery. Regarding the format of the entries added for the host definition, you can add an IP, you can add a CIDR range or subnet. However, in the reference set, you need to add an IP by an IP, one by one. No CIDR is possible, because if you remember, guys, these are the options for creating a reference set. You have IP, so you can add IP, only you cannot add a CIDR range. Okay, so this you have to keep in mind, this difference. The lifetime for the host definition is there until you delete them. You delete the IP entry that you added for your host definition. However, for the reference set, the TTL. So if you believe, for example, that the entries that you are adding, the IOCs that you are adding are they are valid, let's say, for 1 week until the relevant entry that you are using for uploading this list is changing regularly the IOC. So the validity for the IOCs is 1 week. So you can do that using a reference set. However, in host definition, you cannot do that. You have to delete or modify them either manually or using the server discovery. So how can we tie them together? Actually, the concept of host reference comes into picture. So if we go here in the building blocks, if we scroll down here, you'll find also host reference. So it's actually coming after those definitions. So if we check, for example, the host reference for SSH servers, so you can see that again the port definition is here, and you can check either the destination or the source address or whatever you want against the list of server IPs. So to make it actually corresponding to the same concept of the host definition, we use the attribute of destination address. Okay, and here is actually a reference set where you define the SSH servers. Okay, So the host reference is actually a way for doing the same thing like host definition, and in most of the rules you will find the rule itself referencing not just the host definition, also referencing actually not the rule itself, the false positive is actually referencing the host definition and referencing the host reference. So if you remember guys, the one we were talking about for false positive, it seems I closed it. So simply if we just search for false positive or checking here, for example this one, you can see not this one. If we go for one for SSH server, this one, yeah, you will see here that it's actually referencing the host definition and the host ref. So a valid question can come now on the table: do we need actually to update both? Every time we are updating server type, we need to update the host definition and the host reference. The answer from IBM that this is not required. Any of them is enough, because the tests that they are using is when a flow or an event matches any of the following. However, I can tell you guys that yes, you need, because if we select something randomly, actually this is not the case. If you check here, for example this one, you will see that when any event matches of any of the following is host definition RBC server, so the host reference is not added. Actually I prefer that the first one to update is the host definition, because it seems that the host definition is in anywhere. So at least update the host definition. If you want to update both, this will be better. Okay, so host definition is the minimum for you. Okay, next we will talk about the false positives. Okay, so actually use the false positive wizard carefully guys. Okay, this is very critical, so don't use the false positive wizard unless you are very sure that the event you are investigating is really false. So for example here I'm trying to exempt this one. So from the actions you select false positive. You can see here the options available, that two sections actually. Event flow property, you put some attributes for the event flow. So the attributes here is the QID number, or the low level category or the high level category. Okay, so the event flow with a specific QID. So here is the QID is just inherited from the log. You can just exempt it, this QID. Okay, so when selecting this means that no more trigger for this ID. For the second section, which specify traffic direction, so for this specific source, this Brazil IP to this destination, or from this source to any destination, or from any source to this destination, or from any source to any destination. So as you move down the ladder, you can see more relaxing or more generic false positive rule you are adding. So use this carefully guys, because try to be more specific as much as you can, otherwise you may have situations of false negatives, which means that there are real attack, but your QRadar system is not generating an offense because you have applied some false positive, very generic one that led you to that situation. The other options for here is so the first one is QID, second one is with the low level category, the third one is with the high level category. Okay, I will come to some scenarios for the false positives, but let's first do it together. So if you come here, for example this one, and you need to first stop the live stream and come here and press the false positive. So here it will load for you the details. The query has timeout. Okay, let me run it again. Okay, stop. and then I will choose this one, for example. When I press the false positive, okay, so you can see here it loads the information even with the flag. So you can see the first option is the QID, which is 2750010. So this is very specific to this event, so it doesn't rely actually on the low level category or the high level category, which is the low level category is firewall deny. So if you select the QID, you are very sure that this corresponds to checkpoint. So this is very specific. As you move down, it becomes more generic. So choosing the low level category or the high level category actually can include other firewalls as well. So use this carefully. Otherwise, you can exempt, as I said, some critical or malicious traffic in the future. And also try to be more specific and select the specific source and specific destination. If you are facing that same alert coming from others in the other IPs, you may consider the other options. So this led us to this slide where actually I will talk about the different situations when you have multiple attackers or multiple targets. And before that, if you press here the tune, it will just create one entry into the system, and actually this entry is added to some false positive building block called user building block false positive, user defined false positive tunings building block. So this one is actually the one you need to use in case you need to add or delete an entry to the tuning, your tuning. So actually if you search for this one here, you should find it, and we should see the entry that we just added. So this one, okay, so you can see here the category that we just added for this specific event. So actually it was from this specific ID. You remember this was the QID. So if actually we click here, this was the entry that we just added, guys. Okay, so back to these are the different scenarios that you need to consider as a tuning methodology for false positives. So if you have one attacker and one event, use the false positive wizard to tune the specific event. Same applies if it's even many targets. And if we just think about it, because you have a specific event, so this can allow you actually to select the event itself. So returning back here, sorry guys, yeah, this one for example, if we check the false positive, so if it's one event, so it's enough to use this wizard to exempt it from further correlation in the future. So one attacker, one event, use the false positive wizard to tune the specific event. Either it's one target or many targets, because you have one QID, you have one event, so this one can do the task for you. Actually, if we jump and come to this one, if it was many sources, many attackers, still it's one event, again use the false positive wizard to tune the specific event, because again we still have one QID that we can exempt. And for the many attackers, you can choose this option, so any source to this specific destination, so you can do it again with the false positive wizard. So now we discussed this one, and this one. So for this three scenarios, 1 to 3 scenarios where you have one attacker, many unique events in the same category. for one target or many targets, or many attackers with many events in the same category. So the common thing between this one, that you have a same category. So in the three cases, use the false positive wizard again to tune the category, because here you can choose the category. So if it's one attacker, one source, choose this one. If it's multiple, choose this one. So you can cover the three situations actually with the false positive wizards. Okay, remaining now is to talk about these two cases. So we already covered 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3. Now these two, actually you need to use the custom rule editor to tune the specific event. So basically you need to edit the building block itself of inside the rules. You cannot use the false positive wizard, because in this situation you have here many attackers, many targets, and you have one event. So as you actually you can use the false positive wizard, but if you do so and you have one event and you choose any source, any destination, actually you may fall in a risk of bypassing this QID for any future source and destination. This is a bit risky, so better to use the building blocks, edit the building blocks inside the custom rule editor to just exempt this QID for a specific source and a specific destination, or multiple sources and multiple destinations actually, so you can define them without actually falling into a situation of false negative. Also same thing for if you have same category, however you have many targets, many attackers, many targets. Again, you can come here and select this one. However, this is not recommended. It's better to edit the building blocks, and for this specific category you define the list of sources and destinations that you believe false for this situation. At the fourth and fifth row, you can see a scenario where you have different categories or different many unique events in different categories. Okay, either one attacker or many attackers. You cannot use the false positive wizards because you have actually many unique events. So this one is for specific event and specific category, so you cannot actually use the false positive wizard in that two cases, because you have many unique events or in different categories. So in that case you have to edit actually the building blocks. Okay, and you can edit the building blocks for specific host IP in that case, because it's only one attacker. So actually I will try to interpret these scenarios in this slide. So you can see here in the below three cases we use the false positive wizard to exclude the specific QID. So actually these three scenarios is this one, and this one. So where you have here one attacker and one destination. So you have one event QID for the three scenarios. So here one attacker, one destination, one attacker, multiple destination, multiple attacker, one destination. In the three cases you can use the false positive wizard, as we said, because actually you have the option to exempt the specific QID. For the below case, we can use the false positive wizard. The below case is multiple attacker and multiple destination. Still we have one event QID. Actually you can use the false positive wizard because we have this option, but we recommend to exempt to actually use the building blocks. So why is that? Because if you exempt the QID and you select any source, any destination, this will bypass this event flow altogether from CRE in the future. So better to just bypass it for the building block that triggers it. So you go for the building block that trigger the event, and apply this exemption. So even you don't need to specify multiple sources or multiple destinations. Just go to this building block and exempt this QID from within this building block, and this will ensure that for other building blocks that are fired for the same QID, this building block will still fire. Okay, these other building blocks will still fire. Okay, so this is a more safe action to exempt in case of that you have multiple attackers and multiple destinations. Don't just rush and come here and do this, guys, because this will exempt the specific event ID for any building block. If you edit the building block itself which generated this event, it will be much safe. Okay, in this below 3 cases we use false positive wizard, which is this is actually those 3 cases. This one, this one and this one and this one. Okay, so actually you have the same category, one attacker to one target, or many targets, or many attackers to one target. So coming here again, so in that specific 3 cases we have a specific category, so we can use the false positive wizard, because in that case we can come here and select the specific low level category or specific high level category, and then either this case if it's one attacker, or this case if it's multiple attackers to the same target. Okay, what is the next scenario is it's very close to this one, but this time we have same category. So actually you can use the false positive wizard to exempt the low level category and use the any source to any destination. So this situation is multiple attacker, multiple destination with one category. So actually this is the case here, this one. Okay, you can actually use the false positive wizard. However, this is not recommended, because again it's better to go to the specific building block and exclude the specific category. The last 4 cases is actually not available here. You cannot use them because they are using multiple event or multiple categories. Actually these are the 4 cases here. Okay, so actually you cannot use the false positive wizard because you don't have the option to use multiple source, multiple destination, and at the same time use multiple categories or multiple multiple categories. Okay, so these are the things, guys, for the tuning methodology. And for this specific 2 cases you can tune the building block for the category and specify the attacker to be more specific. Okay, I hope this is clear, guys, for you. I will include this presentation in the article section following this lesson. Actually it will be following the lesson for use case app as well. Okay, last but not least is the vulnerability assessment scanners. So as we said before, the vulnerability assessment is one source for the asset profile database. So this is one value for it, and the other value for it is to determine the offense threat levels and remove false positives by correlating event data, network activity, and behavioral changes. So for example, if your vulnerability assessment has provided you with the vulnerability list for specific server like IIS server, so it provided the vulnerabilities for the IIS server, it will be updated for that IIS server in your asset profile database. So in case of an offense that is triggering for IIS type of servers, this can actually be checked by the QRadar, and if the server is vulnerable according to the information in the asset profile database. This can help the QRadar to identify whether this is actually true positive or not, so can trigger an offense or not based on this information. So updating your asset database with vulnerability data is very important, so you can schedule the scan and maintain the VA data. So you can integrate QRadar with multiple tools like Rapid7, Nessus, and so on, and the scan results provide the system version, port number of each server, and this shows the ports that are open and the vulnerabilities on the system. Okay, so this ends our lesson. I hope that you enjoyed the lesson, guys. It's very intensive lesson. However, it's if you understand it well, you will be able to actually maintain your system in a good shape. And as we explained, all of this tasks that we do together does not rely on an application. However, the IBM guys has pioneered a new app called Use Case Manager, which we installed in the previous lesson. Actually, we will open it in the next lesson and see the magic that these things are identified to you through nice wizards. So the Use Case Manager app will just pinpoint for you that you need to update the network hierarchy. It will tell you some guidelines. It will also pinpoint the building blocks that are referenced by the rules, the noisy rules. It can tell you some best practices or give you some recommendations for the tuning. So it's very nice tool. I do recommend it for any customer that installing it can at least put you on the right direction for tuning your system. So thanks for watching and see you in next lesson.